I have a special guest today, Kyle Vowinkel from Elite Mindsets, a FBI agent in the past and U.S. Army sergeant. So thank you for coming on All Things Business and Technology, Kyle.
You're welcome. Actually, I was not a non-commissioned officer. Actually, was an officer, minor correction, but yeah, proudly served with NCOs and different people in the Army, and proud of my service and those that continue to serve. I thank them.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, as we get into today, can you go ahead and talk to the audience about the story from becoming in the military to FBI to what you're doing today?
So my journey starts in high school when I went and visited my brother at West Point, and I saw the impressive campus there, and more important, I saw the tribe, the collective individuals, the men and women that chose to serve their country at West Point, the cadets, their esprit de corps, their common bond, and that exceptionally high performance level really appealed to me. I wanted to push myself and really work with others at the high levels to defend our country. So I went into West Point and then actually enjoyed that, although the discipline I didn't enjoy so much, but I needed the discipline. In high school, I was a class clown in high school, and I loved to kind of goof off. So the structure of West Point, the regimentation, was beneficial, 100% what I needed. And then I graduated, thankfully, and then went in the Army for 5 years, most of the time there in Fort Hood, Texas, where I was a military police officer for 5 years. And then I applied to be an FBI agent because I was interested in law enforcement and national security matters. So after actually my first application, I was told I was non-competitive. So I had my master's degree. I had graduated from West Point, and I was a very successfully, evaluated Army officer. And to get a rejection letter really just kind of blew me away. I thought, what more did I needed to do to be more competitive? And so instead of like calling the recruiter, the FBI recruiter, I just drove 2.5 hours from Fort Hood down to San Antonio and kind of showed up one Friday afternoon when I had off and said, hey, what can I do to make myself more competitive? And this is, 25 years ago. And she, back when it was paper processed, right, not electronically filed, and she finds my paperwork and says, oh, you were just placed in the wrong pile. You should have been most competitive. You were placed in the least competitive pile. But that story kind of summarizes my whole kind of outlook on life, like being persistent, being disciplined, and a bias for action, right? Not just waiting for things to happen. To me, proactively going out there and making things happen. So same thing with the FBI. I loved serving my country in the Army, then that transitioned to being an FBI special agent for 25 years almost. Started out in Los Angeles, and then did six or so years out there. Was on the Los Angeles SWAT team, which I really enjoyed, that tactical aspect, as well as being a counterintelligence special agent, going after spies. That was really enjoyable. And then I came back to Quantico, Virginia, and I tried out for and selected the second time. Took me 2 times to get through the very arduous FBI hostage rescue team selection process. And I was an HRT operator for 8.5 years. And, it's a national level asset tasked with the most precarious missions under the most volatile circumstances. And I really learned like the exceptional leadership, because again, West Point was exceptional people. The FBI was exceptional people. And now I was truly with the cream of the crop, the best of the best on the hostage rescue team, where I was just ordinary there, but I was among extraordinary people. And that's where I really learned about the mindset is really what matters. We had a mindset of never quit, right? Especially when you have a worthwhile goal. And our mission was very clear: to save lives. So in the pursuit of that goal, we would do literally almost anything except, breaking the law or something unethical or immoral we wouldn't do. But short of that, we would risk our lives. We would, conduct hazardous, risky missions under the most extreme circumstances but it was all for that nobler purpose to protect and save others.
Well, that's just such an amazing career. Now you talked about when you were at the FBI that you had the most critical hostage negotiation stuff. I know a little bit about your background with the Boston Marathon bomber, Somali
Mhm.
pirates. Do you mind getting into one of those stories?
Sure. So after a while, or those 8 years on the hostage rescue team, where we used right intimidation tactics and we bent others to our will through the threat of violence, or sometimes, worst case, we'd have to employ lethal force, but it was always only done in the last possible resort to save lives. And so I learned how to persuade and influence through those very assertive, aggressive actions. But again, it was for the nobler goal. And I watched during that time, we were co housed with the Crisis Negotiation Unit, CNU. And I saw these guys, and there's a couple of women too, who they're like mental chess grandmasters. They're playing on like a 4-dimensional board, and the rest of us, myself included, are just on a 3-dimensional chess board. So I witnessed firsthand some incredible influence techniques and tactics that they accomplished. So thankfully, I went to negotiator training and then transitioned over to that other national asset, the Crisis Negotiation Unit, where I was a hostage negotiator. I spoke with kidnappers, pirates, and terrorists. And there, right, as the hostage negotiator, you persuade through your words and through your ears. Your mouth and your ears are your persuasion tools. We didn't threaten violence. In HRT, it was all about speed, surprise, violence of action. And as a negotiator, you want to slow things down. You don't talk about violence. You don't bring up confrontational things. You're trying to build a connection with the other party in order to positively and ethically influence them to a peaceful outcome. So ideally, right, if I was doing my job as a negotiator, my teammates on HRT or tactical elements would never have to go in the door. So it was an extension of my desire to kind of protect them. And my wife, she also did not like the risks associated with being an HRT operator, although I loved it, but it was stressful in the family. Whereas a negotiator, much safer position mostly. Although with the specific Boston case, it was a little close for comfort, all of us, not just myself. When the marathon bomber was found in that backyard boat in Watertown, the first law enforcement officers responded. There's about 400 of them, and they shot at the bomber. They engaged in massive display of firepower, and hundreds of rounds shot at the bomber, and they didn't elicit any response. He didn't come off the boat. And then they tried commands through a loudspeaker. They just said, "Come out, come out." And then the hostage rescue team got notified, and I was with them there at the Arsenal Mall. That was our staging area. We were about a quarter mile away from where he was found in the backyard by the David Hendenberry, was a homeowner. And once we heard that fusillade of fire, hundreds of rounds, and I thought really it's over. He's probably finished, which is good, right? The end of this terror spree in Boston, because the Monday was the bombing and it was Friday. So 4+ days later, the city was paralyzed with fear. So then in the boat, HRT deploys. I accompany them, my former teammates, and they launch non-lethal concussion devices into the boat to, again, try to eject him from the boat, because we didn't know if on the boat he had more bombs, backpack full of explosives or more weapons. So we wanted to get him off the boat, and we wanted him alive, right? And this is actually, I get questioned the most about this. Why did the FBI want him alive? And it was crystal clear to me. There was a palpable desire, right, of the public and some of law enforcement for revenge, right? He had killed 3 people at the finish line. They'd wounded 250 others. They murdered MIT police officer Sean Collier. So this palpable desire for vengeance was real and understandable. But what if there was another terror cell in New York City or Sacramento or LA or Washington, D.C., or there were other bombs waiting to go off in Las Vegas, timed detonations. So he had potentially extremely valuable intelligence and information that we wanted to extract. because I knew he would face his justice later because we had him in the boat, but there was no point in killing him. So after those attempts had failed and the flashbangs, word came down from the FBI headquarters. The director said, try to negotiate. So there I was, standing next to the house on the side yard. He was in the boat in the backyard. Then 3 words crackled out of the radio: Kyle, you're up. And then talk about an overwhelming sense of pressure on my shoulders. Everyone on scene, and as well as CNN crew around the corner and FBI headquarters was about to listen to each and every word that I said. So incredible pressure to perform at that moment.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and something that I want to thank you for, because that is something that I watched very closely here in Sacramento. As we switch gears, you mentioned that the listening and the persuasion is 2 of your top tactics. How are those working today in your new career as elite mindset owner?
Well, terrific question. So after leaving the FBI, I retired 2 years ago. I founded Elite Mindsets to elevate leaders and teams through to extraordinary levels of performance. And I do that through high impact keynotes and leadership development sessions. So as I mentioned about my unique background, I've practiced leadership at the highest levels when the consequences were the highest, right? Like literally lives were hanging in the balance based off decisions that me and my teammates made. So I have, incredible credibility in the leadership realm and the ability to influence others, based off my time in leadership roles in the FBI, and I retired as a senior executive. And that's one of the challenges now that I notice is that with technology, right, and AI is such a powerful tool for so many people, myself included. I'm using AI on a daily basis. But what I've learned is that the ability for people to teach themselves and learn new tips, techniques, and strategies is truly impressive. But we're still lacking that interpersonal training and connection. It's something that, at this point is not going to be, or is not I think, teachable tool via AI, right? You need human to human interaction. You need to engage people one-on-one, right? So that's a thing that a digital tool does not provide people. And if the next generation, right, can combine that technological edge with strong personal skills, they're going to be unstoppable. So that's what I teach is, communication and influence. I call it the path to influence, based off my FBI hostage negotiator training. I teach people the framework and elite mindset, right? How to positively and ethically influence others to be a better leader and have more beneficial outcomes for both parties.
Wow. Now, if we look at that, how technology is just ever evolving, and if you're currently using the AI and so forth, what is something that you wish that we would slow down and start focusing more on the human element versus AI, and vice versa? Is there something that we could turn over from the human element to the AI?
Well, that's a great question. The essence of communication skills, at least mine personally, and I went to some fabulous institutions, great high school in California, and West Point. Got my master's degree at the University of Central Texas. But I didn't really learn how to truly influence and truly communicate until I became a hostage negotiator. And fortunate to have weeks and weeks and weeks of training through the FBI, and also I was able to go to the Metropolitan School of Negotiation, the London law enforcement course over there, and that interpersonal dynamic, like learning how to truly listen to people, right? So often we're all egocentric individuals and human beings. That's the way we're wired, right? We're the center of the universe. Everyone revolves around us. So our ego is one of our own biggest obstacles to connecting. And so that's one thing I talk about is letting go of the ego. Put your ego on the side when you're trying to connect with someone else. Make it about them, right? So the technology is making us so even more ego focused, right? Because the technology is all individually focused to help me, prepare better presentations or, refine my emails or whatever the language model tool might be helping with. And there is so much benefit to that. But again, it's maximizing my efficiency, but it's, again, just focused on me. And it's so important, right, to have that check of the ego, right, to be able to connect with others. Because going back to the Boston story, and just another example of my proactiveness is, having this bias for action. Nobody thought the bomber was going to be caught or that would result in a peaceful resolution. If you remember, all the violence that week that transpired in the shootings, the interactions, was a violent encounter with law enforcement. But I prepared proactively to be ready just in case. And so I had heard his wrestling coach on CNN. This is Friday morning before he's in the boat, found in the boat. And his wrestling coach had spoke positively about him, the bomber, on national media. So I got his phone number. I reached out. I talked to him for about an hour. Again, just on that slim chance that we found him. So then sure enough, when Kyle, You're Up was called on the radio, I was prepared. I knew intimate details about the bomber, and I showed him respect, right? Every one of us has a desire to be seen, valued, and heard. And when I got up to talk with him, the first 10 minutes, it was just one-way dialogue, but I demonstrated empathy, right? I framed things from his perspective, said, hi, my name's Kyle. I'm with the police. I'm here to talk with you, right? Trying to open the door to dialogue through non-confrontational, non-judgmental communications. That's one area too. I really think with the kind of divisiveness that we see in politics, which then flows out to so many other areas, looking to bridge chasms as opposed to further widening them, that's really a challenge. And I don't know that AI is helping us bridge chasms better. But going back to Boston, when I did finally get him to say water, I built two-way communication through using just words alone. And then I said, I was also a wrestler in high school. And I spoke to your wrestling coach. I know who you are, Jahar. I know who you are. And that was like a lightning bolt connecting me with him because I had shown him respect, treated him with dignity, and I learned about him, right? Being seen, valued, and heard. I was the first one that whole week to approach him with respect, even though I knew what he had done. It was my job to connect with him. It wasn't my job to condemn him at that point. So I was able to build that bridge based on that commonality that we had and my research, learning about him, to can foster cooperation, to gain trust, and have him basically follow my instructions to come off the boat.
Yeah, the fact that you was able to connect with someone and take your ego out of it and show him the kindness. Talk about how that research really helped you connect with him.
Well, the research was invaluable because I knew those specific details that he was elected his wrestling team captain by his peers. So I knew that he was respected by his peers. I knew he was a pretty good wrestler. I wasn't a pretty good wrestler, but it doesn't matter, right? When you're trying to build rapport with another person, and this is right, AI can't really teach you this, but when you're trying to build rapport, if you can find a commonality with someone, I guarantee you, and I talk to audiences and thousands of people every year, if I took the time in every audience, I know I could find a commonality with every member of the audience. But it takes time, takes some research, but we all have so much in common. And when you're trying to connect, you're trying to influence, take that time, invest in learning about the other person, right? Put your ego on the side, make it about them, and learn about them. Because had I not done that, had I not revealed those intimate details about his nickname, because he actually bolted upright. When I said, I know who you are, Jahar, he literally bolted his head and shoulders upright in the boat. We could see it because he knew that I knew who he was. And that was that electric moment of connection that was enabled because of that proactive research that I'd done to learn about him.
Now, as we switch gears a little bit, and we talk about mentorships, did you have a mentor going into the FBI, or was that something that they just had these other leaders that you worked with?
I've been fortunate to have several mentors throughout the years. Uh, at West Point, actually, one of my roommates' uh, fathers was an FBI agent, and so it was like, call it yearling year, your sophomore year. He actually took us out to an FBI range. He took us to driver training. Used to be in Wallkill, New York. So I saw a couple examples of how the FBI conducts training and how the FBI treats their people, and the autonomy really appealed to me of an FBI agent being able to run their own investigation within the parameters of investigative guidelines and supervisory oversight, of course. But I love that compared to the Army, which necessarily so, but I hated the Army's like strict, regimented everything, from how you dig your foxhole to how you prepare your encampments to how you have your toothbrush and toothpaste at West Point. They had to be a certain way. And I desired some creativity. And I didn't see it, kind of an immature look at the Army on those formative years, but the Bureau just really interested me because I wanted a little more of that autonomy and independence. And that was one mentor there. And then in the FBI, I definitely have to highlight my partner is named Vince in the Austin negotiation unit, and he really took me underneath his wing. And he was and is probably one of the greatest negotiators in the world because he's so good at connecting with people and influencing others. And even if you're not in a position of authority, this is what I learned so well from Vince, is negotiators are just advisors, right, to the boss, meaning we have no real authority whatsoever. But our ability to influence the boss to a certain course of action and also to influence tactical is tremendous, right? Again, if you put your ego on the side, because that was a big challenge for me too, first going to the negotiation unit, realizing like we have zero authority. But then Vince taught me, Kyle, it's about persuading others to your plan of action or your course of action. So I really learned that, leading and influence isn't reliant upon a positional power. So he's another mentor that I owe a lot to and still talk to.
Now, as we go to some of like your biggest failures, both in your professional life and in your work life, what are some of those two things that are some of your what you look at as the biggest failure? And then what was the learning outcome from that?
Oh, definitely have many, many failures in my career. The first, probably most significant one was we'll start at West Point, was in high school, senior year, I did not take calculus, right? Because I was interested in West Point and they didn't require you to take calculus back then. And so my parents strongly encouraged me to take calculus. And I said, no, I want to enjoy my senior year. I'm not worried about calculus. And boy, did I pay the man when I got to West Point. I got accepted, fortunately. And then first semester, I got hit with calculus. And I was crushed. Like I had, first time in my life, like a D in a class. And I just wasn't grasping the concepts. And they have additional instruction. Like it's great. West Point class size is limited to 20 students per instructor. And I started going like halfway through once I realized like how deeply in trouble I was not having any calculus background. I started going additional instruction and devoted a lot of time and energy, and my classmates helped me too, learning the calculus. So I went into the final again with like a D plus average because I had so many problems. And then I was most proud I escaped with a C minus. So I worked really, really hard for that. And the point being, it's all about preparation and setting yourself up for the path of success. And I didn't do that right with a calculus. And I've learned like so much comes down to preparation, just like in Boston, right? If you're prepared for something, if that's your job, be prepared for it. Do the work now. So if it does happen or an opportunity pops up and you're not prepared for it, well, shame on you. And so I learned that bias for action, being proactively prepared is so critical. And the
Yeah,
other failure I'll touch upon is most significant was as an FBI agent. I had two very good friends, John and Mike, in FBI Los Angeles on the SWAT team together. There were three of us, and we were all interested in trying out for HRT, which hostage rescue team selection process is extremely grueling, like gut wrenching. I compared it to like a month of Ranger school condensed to 2 weeks. Sleep deprivation. You're constantly assessed on not just your performance in different leadership roles, but also on shooting, in your judgment for like arrest scenarios, your report writing, your analysis, critical thinking. And we prepared for over a year together, like truly diligent, exceptional workouts. And we pushed our bodies to the limits. We prepared for all the different events that we didn't know about because it's kind of a blind process. And we show up, and I thought I did decently well, but I didn't. My two colleagues, John and Mike, did great. They were wonderful partners. And I kind of spoke and questioned things when I shouldn't have opened my mouth, right? Especially as a new selectee. There was an obstacle course. We're going through the obstacle course, and the instructor said that I had missed a portion of the obstacle course. And I was confused, like, how could I miss this portion of the obstacle course? And it's a timed event. And then I started asking questions, which is the last thing I should have done, right? The instructor perceived me as questioning him and what he was saying. And unfortunately, right, it left a question in their mind. And if there's any question in their mind at HRT selection after you finish it, they either say, thanks for coming out, and there's nothing more to said, right? You're kind of done. Or they say, hey, we'd be interested in seeing you come back. So when I was not selected, my two buddies were selected. Like, that was soul crushing because we had worked so long and so hard together, and they got chosen, which is, it's the average rate is only 25% of the people that finish selection, right? And that's mostly former military that go, but not exclusively former military. So again, extremely selective, grueling process. We'd all finish it, but they got chosen. And that was really humbling. And it took me a while to kind of process and realize, right, I had to think, like, how did I fail? What could I improve upon? Right? What was the feedback? Right? Feedback is a gift, right? If someone or some entity is taking the time to provide you feedback, take it to heart, right? Doesn't mean you follow each and every, if your friend gives you feedback, you don't have to follow everything they say, but you should sincerely take it as that gift and view it through the lens of this person's trying to help me. And once I did that and truly took it to heart, then I had to decide, am I going to go through this whole rigorous, extremely demanding process, preparation for a whole nother year, again, just to try out for that elite team. And that was really hard. And one of my mentors there in LA, he was an assistant special agent in charge. And I remember talking with him, and it told me how disappointing, depressing, I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I embarrassed myself and the Los Angeles organization by not being selected. And he helped me, stop beating myself up and said, we go through this crazy merry-go-round of life just once. And I'll never forget, he said, you reach for the brass ring. They used to have a brass ring that you could try to get on a merry-go-round. And then I think you got a prize if you got the brass ring. But I had missed it. I missed it badly in my impression. And he said, doesn't matter. Do you want to go around again and try it? Or for the rest of your life, do you want to wish that you tried it another time? And I'm so glad he kind of put it in that perspective, because I didn't want to have any doubts. I told myself after that, I'm going to try it one more time, and that's it. And if I don't make it, that's fine. I gave it 2 valiant efforts. If I'm not selected, then I'm not selected.
Wow, that's an amazing analogy, the merry-go-round and reaching up for that brass ring, knowing that as time goes by, do you want to make sure that you have another shot at that or not? There's so many great nuggets that you have given me today. I know we're coming up close to time, so 2 of the last questions that I love to wrap up with is one is, what is one question you wished I asked?
I wish you'd ask about kind of building that mental toughness, that elite mindset, which I learned over, decades of testing myself. And that's what I try to share with individuals and leaders now, is that, you're not born a leader, right? You're made into a leader. And I think Vince Lombardi is the one that said it, like, nobody falls to the top of the mountain, right? You have to claw your way up. And sometimes it's just one step at a time. And to me, it's that mental toughness, that mindset, right, which can get you to the top. And you're going to stumble, you're going to fall, but you should practice, especially as a leader, practice making decisions, because that's what the Army and actually the FBI did really well. We did tabletop exercises, and we also would, where we would, have the leadership sit around and have a scenario, and there was like a facilitator, like legitimate tabletop exercise where you talk through, okay, leader, here's circumstances, this has happened, now what do you do? So the leader is placed under pressure, but it's in a safe environment, but they're rehearsing making difficult decisions under pressure. And then we would even escalate it up a notch. We'd have a field training exercise next, where maybe it's still a simulation, right? So no one's going to get injured, but now we're practicing on a real life, role players at a real life location, a facility. So going through those leadership development, whether it's tabletop exercise or field training exercise or whatever it is in your organization, can be tailored to them. That's what I tell corporations, like, you have to elevate your leaders. You can't just promote them and expect them then to be able to rise to that level. You need to provide some training to improve their level of performance, to get that mental toughness so they don't crumble right under the stress. Because one thing I talk about elite mindsets is staying calm, cool, and collected under pressure, right? I've been in the most extreme situations. I've seen leaders rise and fall based off the confidence of the team in them. And if the team sees that leader is uncertain or, wavering in their commitment or the plan, then that lack of confidence is going to spread like wildfire through the team. But if they're calm, cool, and collected, that instills trust and confidence in the team to accomplish that mission, no matter how difficult that mission may be.
Yeah, that's really good. That's something that I actually live by. It's an old Deion Sanders. You look good, you feel good, you play good.
Right.
And so, and as we wrap up, what are 3 books that you would recommend for anybody? And now these could be personal books or books for business and technology.
Yeah, so there's 3 books that I like. One is Grit by Angela Duckworth. She did a lot of study on resilience, and she actually talked to West Point cadets as part of her research on that. And grit is the power of passion and perseverance in achieving long-term goals. Right? Talent is not enough. What truly matters, as she studies, is that sustained effort over time. And grit is that combination of resilience, persistence, and deep commitment. And leaders can apply those principles too, to be tenacious, to build tenacious, high-performing teams. So I like Grit a lot. Another one is on mindset also. It's The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. Sorry, I think I pronounced it. He's a Harvard-trained researcher, and he presents scientific evidence that optimism and positivity fuel success. It's not the other way around. Because I'm a big believer in how you think, how your mindset is. If you view something as an obstacle and it's going to slow you down, well, guess what? You're going to view it as an obstacle and it's going to slow you down. Or you view it as just a hurdle you got to get over, and then you can continue your path towards success. Then you're going to find creative ways to get over that hurdle. Because I've seen some of the most significant obstacles placed in front of the hostage rescue team and the negotiation unit, seemingly insurmountable. But I've seen leadership kind of rise to the occasion with that optimism and positivity, which help generate creative solutions. Because another story I talk about, and I won't go into details, but one of the most challenging FBI kidnappings in our history was when a deranged individual went on a school bus, shot and killed the bus driver, and took an innocent 5-year-old hostage for 7 days. And for 7 long days, it was a back and forth kind of chess match to us to find ways to try to save that innocent 5-year-old child. And if it wasn't for that optimistic and positive outlook, we would not have been successful. So that's the second book. And then the last book is Extreme Ownership I hate to give the Navy SEALs credit. No, I'm just kidding. Being an Army guy, enjoy the rivalry of our Army-Navy brothers and sisters. But I thought Extreme Ownership is great because that actually is what we're taught back at West Point in the Army, to take and seek responsibility for your actions. There's so many times it seems today that politicians or others don't take responsibility for their decisions or the actions of their team, and that's painful to me. So I like how Jocko professes adopting that ownership mindset. So leaders create a culture of trust, resilience, and execution at the highest levels.
Those are three really good books. I've actually read a couple of those. And as we get ready to wrap up, where can we find are you online for your coaching, or do you do in person for your coaching? Can you explain to the viewers where they could get some insights about your company?
Elite Mindsets is the website, elitemindsets.com. And the two things I do is high impact keynotes. I do corporate leadership retreats, and I do national conventions. So up to audiences of several thousand, to smaller, just leadership development sessions where I just do 20 executives. For example, like Aon as a pinnacle leadership program development for their rising C-suite executives. They're already significant leaders, but they bring these 20 or so back a couple times a year for additional leadership development, like we were talking about before. And so they bring me in, for example, and I love doing this. And then we'll do actual interactive leadership development exercise with them over 2 or 3 hours. So building and elevating leaders through those development sessions, I truly enjoy, but I also enjoy the keynotes too, because I connect with audiences and I make it experiential. So it's not me talking at you. If I'm fortunate enough to be with one of your listeners in a future engagement, they'll see I truly connect with the audience and it's interactive. And so even if 3,000 people, and I was in Istanbul, Turkey last year, and I'm still asking the audience questions, interacting with them. So it's a truly not just a speaking experience, but a learning experience for both of us. So those are the two things I provide. I don't do much individual coaching. I prefer the smaller executive team levels for those leadership development sessions.
Well, Kyle, thank you very much for joining me on All Things Business and Technology.
Thanks for having me, David. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Hope your listeners have a great day as well.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you'll tune in next time. For more information on how we can help your business, check out our website at sigmaways.com. I'd love to hear your feedback. Please send me a message with any topic or questions you want me to cover. Also, if you're in the world of business and technology, I would love to have you as a guest. Please hit the like and subscribe button below and stay up to date on the next video. Once again, I'm David, and this is All Things Business and Technology. Cheers.